Right away, I would build an email course. Too often you hear do an email newsletter, get people's emails, and people don't even conceptualize that. To me, building out an email course is the best way to have something of value right from the beginning and to stay in constant communication with your ideal client. So the basics of an email course would be you have probably, first you'd have some sort of opt-in checklist. It could be a journal, something that's going to speed up people's progress. Have 3 emails about kind of why people are set up for failure. So why is the average attorney set up for failure? Why is the average kind of business with their intellectual property set up for failure? What's society done to make you screwed over? So it might be, we aren't even taught about intellectual property. So you don't even know like the problem. So you have 3 emails that really educate on why you were set up for failure.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Joe Sanok. And Joe in high school and college hated business and thought it was slimy, in his own words. Got into college, got a psychology degree as well as a degree in comparative literature, or religion, not literature, religion. And then took a year off between undergrad and graduate, and then went back and got a dual master's in psychology, and I can't remember the second one, so they'll have to remind us. And then worked as a counselor for a while, then went to work at a community college, and then 1 year had a rough year with the daughter having some surgery, having some battles with cancer, loss of a child, and so he started to start the business, which is part of what he's doing now, which is the practice of practice, and started that started a couple other side hustles, sold his business. Our practice focused on the side hustles full time, and that leads kind of where he's at today. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Joe.
Wow, Devin, that's pretty comprehensive.
Hey, absolutely. I have the innate ability to take everybody's life and boil it down into 30 seconds. So with that, as we dive into your journey, I took it and compressed it in 30 seconds, but let's unpack that a bit and tell us how your journey got started in high school and college, thinking that business was slimy and that you never want to go into business.
Yeah, it all started when I had some friends that they were selling this brand new technology, and every time you sold one, you got $1,000. And I thought, well, I should sign up for selling this brand new technology. And come to find out, it was a vacuum cleaner. We were selling door to door, and I got sucked into one of those pyramid schemes and sold 2.5 vacuums, one to my parents, one to my parents' friends. And then I got so bored going door to door, I told a friend, if you just,
that's what I was gonna say. How do you sell a half of? I get 2 vacuums to your parents and or your friends' parents, but you're gonna have to tell me how you sell half a vacuum.
Yeah. So I got so sick of just going door to door by myself. I told a friend of mine, if you just ride along, I'll give you half the commission. Like, I just don't even care. I'm so sick of this job. I just got to sell this last vacuum. And then we sold it to this elderly couple and split the commission, and I had to pay the taxes on the whole thing. So I pretty much made nothing on that second, that half of a vacuum. But for me, that's what business was. It was, selling this overpriced vacuum, and learning how to sell to people that didn't want to buy things, not believing in a product, and then, not feeling real great about it. Like, that's what I thought business was all through college. And a lot of the business major types that I met were those same types of people that they just wanted to make money. They didn't care about other things. And I was into psychology and social work and comparative religion and deeper things. So I had, there's definitely an ego boost there as well. But really, as I started to enter into, especially the nonprofit world, helping, runaway kids and families, and just seeing some of the basics of branding and business and marketing, and how oftentimes nonprofits don't know anything about that stuff, I found that I kept being drawn to helping them craft a better message, helping them have better branding. All through college, I was in different bands, and we'd sell t-shirts and have cool stickers, and I knew what looked good. And then I just started applying that to nonprofits. And, when I really look at the breadcrumbs that led me to today, it was just trying these things from more of a heart-centered approach that, I wanted to help these kids, and I wanted to help get grants and funding. And if I could do that in a way that really crafted their message well, people got more money to get help.
So now with that as part of your journey and just making sure I'm clear. So you went, got the undergraduate and you got it, I think you said in psychology and comparative religion. And then you went and took a year off and then also got the double master's in psychology. And what was the other degree?
Yeah, in counseling. So in Michigan and in many states, there's different licenses for different master's degrees. And so it just opened up more doors to get a double master's degree, to get licensed as both a psychologist and as a licensed counselor.
Makes sense. And so now you come out of getting the master's degrees, and I think that you started working as a counselor before working in a community college. Is that right?
Yeah. So for a number of years was working in nonprofits, still often kids that had been kicked out of school, had been kicked out of, a variety of different places, and mostly residential facilities. So these are kids that left for 6 to 18 months from their families and really had to get some severe help. So I would be the therapist that was working with them to kind of change how they were thinking, work through their trauma, build appropriate attachment, things like that. Eventually got jobs in community mental health and within the court system. And so still really working with kids that were having a really rough time with life, and oftentimes, their families as well. But to pay off student loan debt, I just started this side gig counseling practice, really to once or twice a week after work, just see a handful of clients. And at the time, the insurance companies in my area weren't accepting any new therapists. And so I just said, well, I'll just do private pay. People can just pay, and, I'll give them a receipt. If they want to take that to their flexible spending account or HSA, they could do that. But really, it wasn't the intent to start a business. It was literally just to make some money to pay off student loan debt. So I sat down with a friend that was an accountant, and he said, you should file an LLC. You should do all these different things, keep track of your tax money and things I had never heard about in all of graduate school. And so was a business owner, seeing 4 clients a week. But I think that's really where I started to realize that the marketing and business and just like the technical side of running a business, nobody learns that in grad school in the counseling world. And so
I don't know that anybody, I went and got an MBA and I still don't know that I learned it. You learn aspects of it, but I don't know, I don't know there's any degree that really prepares you to run a business or to manage all those things. There's
seriously.
too many skill sets, too many things to balance, and oftentimes education just doesn't have enough of, or just isn't grounded enough in real world application. You just have to, until you get into it, you're never going to get it. So don't feel bad, dude, with it. I think every degree has that same issue.
Yeah. And for me, it was very practical. And, I started the website Practice of the Practice back in 2012 to really just document my journey to other therapists, to say, hey, I read guerrilla marketing. Here's how I'm applying it. Anyone else have ideas on how to do it? And then in early 2013, started the podcast to just interview, honestly, to get access to people that I didn't want to pay for consulting. So to find SEO experts, to find website experts, to find marketing experts that I could just pick their brains for half an hour for free. And then, maybe position myself to launch some sort of consulting business from that. But early on, it really was, I'm a co-learner with a fellow therapist. And this was all while I had my private practice that was just on the side and was working full-time at the community college.
So now you start this on the side and said, okay, for, get a little bit of extra money, get into trying out business, find that it's more enjoyable. It's not quite as slimy as a selling vacuums. And you kind of go down this road. And what started, I think when you talked a little bit before, when you kind of started this, it was also in a time where you're having a rough patch with, health issues with yourself, your daughter, the loss of a baby. And so, what was the timing on that? Was that before you started the side hustle? Was that in the midst of it? Was it a release to have something else to focus on, or kind of what was the genesis and the balance of all that?
Yeah. So all of that was 2012. So my oldest was born in 2011. She was born with some severe heart issues. So her first year, she was on medication to keep fluid off of her heart and was waking up every hour and a half to have her diaper changed, and then was really thirsty, but didn't have the energy to drink. And I mean, really, it was just getting her up to weight, and ended up right before her first birthday, having a full heart surgery, which was successful, went well. 2012, just a couple weeks after we got the all clear, she's healthy, she's good, she's going to be fine. I find out that I have cancer. And so I have to get back into the medical medical world. So, I mean, we'd been in this medical world for over a year at that point and thinking, all right, we're finally done. And then, I'm in it with cancer. And then in the midst of that, end up having a miscarriage. And, my grandma died. It was just one of those years that, everyone has a 2012, but you just think, how much more can a family take? And I think that really, at the time, I didn't realize it, but it was really one of those moments where I said, do I want to be working a 40-hour job? And it wasn't that I hated my job either. I loved it. I had a great boss. I had tons of autonomy. The college had a great pension. So it was even a harder decision because it was kind of the top of the field for counseling. And both my parents had worked in the schools and were like, what are you doing? You're getting a state pension when no one gets pensions. And I decided to leave. I decided to go do my full-time counseling practice and to do the counseling consulting that would have been 2015. I ended up leaving. So I had to take a little bit of time to really think through, like, do I want to do this? Look at the numbers, hired some 1099s to be doing therapy also. So I had some kind of guaranteed income, but then took the full family medical leave act when my second child was born to just step down to half-time, see how things fit. And every month was better than the month before. And I just knew I need to at least give this a whirl and see if I can make this business into something rather than always wonder if I could have.
No, and I think that makes sense. Now, one quick, maybe just circling back for follow-up question.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like, you had health issues. And I think, like I said, I think everybody has those 2012s, type thing. It's different for everybody. Not everybody deals with cancer. Not everybody deals with health issues. Sometimes it's loss of a job, it's a divorce, it's business going bankrupt, it's, whatever it is. But I think everybody has to do that. And then you have to figure out how you're going to deal with that, in the varying degrees and the varying situations. But now, as you did that, was there what was the tipping point that, and maybe there isn't just a tipping point, but what was kind of the conclusion said, hey, I'm going to leave the practice I'm at and focus on this full time? Because that's in and of itself a bit of a scary thing, because you said you're at the top of your practice, you're doing well and everything else. So what was kind of that, or tipping point, or that motivation for saying, nope, I'm going to go try this out on my own?
Yeah, I remember this moment. It was actually a couple years after all the cancer, after 2012. So it probably would have been 2014. And my boss at the college was great. She'd let me come in late or leave early, or like, as long as I did my hours, she didn't really care. And so there'd be times that I'd go and I'd do a counseling session over lunch, and, it'd take me 15 minutes to get there, do an hour counseling session, come back. I might work a little bit more in the evening or in the morning. And so I scooted over to my practice, which was a corner office view of the bay. So we have this beautiful bay, this water here in Traverse City. I had this 4-office suite that overlooked the water. So I go over there for my lunch to do a counseling session with somebody. And I go back to the community college and I go down to my basement office that has no windows. And it couldn't have been a more stark contrast between the two, just in regards to actual physical location. But then I started to run the numbers in regards to how much I was making. And I realized I was making more on this little side gig with, a handful of contractors than I was at this full-time job. I'm like, I'm putting in 10 hours a week into this thing, and it's making as much as my 40-hour-a-week job. What would happen if I quit the 40-hour-a-week job and just worked 20 hours a week? And they just started to play these what ifs with the numbers, and just, what would I do with my time? Could I stay motivated? And really, I still remember just the way that stairwell looked when I was walking back that time, and just realizing, yeah, this is definitely, I need to start moving away from this job, or at least find a way that I can test this out to leave the full-time job and at least see if the private practice could really take off.
No, and I think it makes sense. And, it's kind of interesting. It also describes almost a journey. A lot of times I think of attorneys that, that do their own practice. Now, plenty of attorneys, you work your way, the typical model is you work your way up to the top of the firm, you make partner, and life is wonderful, or at least in quotes. And, when it really is a lot of times you get to the top and you're saying, I made it to the top and I still want to do my own thing, and I still want to, be able to direct it. And even if I don't maybe make as much money, or I can make more money, but I can have my own, captain my own ship, do my own thing. And I think that a lot of people kind of arrive at that same spot. And so now you make the leap, go full time. You say, okay, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to see how it goes. And, I can make more money here. I can do my own thing, have my own direction. And you jump in full time now. How did it go? Was it a rocket ship to the top and you just had more work and more money than you knew what to do with? Was it a bumpy beginning and you had a lot of things to figure out and mistakes made, or kind of how did it go?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I was basically running two different businesses. So I had the counseling practice, which was a very traditional mental health counseling practice. People come in for counseling for 45 to 50 minutes. I'm adding clinicians there. And then I had this podcast consulting business going also. And so really realizing I had two businesses that were competing for my time. And so figuring out first, like, what are the main priorities here? Where's the low hanging fruit? And so for me, realizing there was immense need for good therapists in our Northern Michigan town. And so, I had this 4 office suite and I had 4 people working there. There was plenty of time to add extra people. So the first year was really pretty aggressive in getting more 1099s in. In Michigan, we're a very 1099 friendly state. That's not true in every state. So I had 13 clinicians that were working in the office. And so had lots of, we were focusing on SEO, focusing on all sorts of things. How do we automate, especially our front desk that was all virtual. So like our front desk coordinator lived in Texas. And so making sure that those automations went well, and things that I just didn't know about. But being able to learn, how do you work with assistants? How do you work with a team? How do you help them set a vision while also realizing, hey, you're 1099s, like you're kind of showing up and working and going home. Like what do I want to do here? Do I want to have a family culture where we feel like we give each other hugs, or is it just people that show up and they do good work and they go home? So even just sorting through what I wanted in the business, I think was a big challenge during that phase. But then also realizing that there was this growing passion in an area that wasn't as clear cut financially. In therapy, you sit down, you do a counseling session, you're going to make 120 to 200 bucks an hour all day long. You can just show up and do that. You've given yourself a higher paying job in that situation. And I knew long-term time freedom for me was something that I wanted to work towards. And so I then knew that I had to put extra time into committing to what was I going to do with the podcast, with the consulting, with growing that team. And that's where I think I really started to have to think about scalability differently than just the one-on-one counseling.
No, and I think that there's, again, it's just fun to hear that, I think it's always interesting is different of journeys that people have. There's always a lot of commonalities. And I do think that you get into a business now, whether or not it actually happens, you always get in thinking, hey, I'll have a bit more flexibility, or I can be like it is on TV, and I can have work on them, go in and work for a couple hours in the morning and go surf for the afternoon. And I only work for 2 days a week. And, and I don't know that that's quite reality, but I do think there is some desire to have a bit more of a ability to set your own schedule, have the financial situation you want to be in, and also be able to do what you want to do. And it sounds like, as you were figuring things out, you were working towards that balance. And so now, and you started that. Now remind me, when did you jump in full time, or what year was that?
Yes, that was 2015. I'm really glad you bring up that whole scheduling thing, because that first summer in 2015, for the first time really since college, I was completely in control of my schedule. And so that first summer, I did an experiment that I didn't really realize how significant it would be for how I think about time and where I'm going to work. But I took every Friday off that summer as an experiment to just say, I'm going to give this a whirl. Like, well, let's see what happens. Let's look at the finances and how I feel. And at the end of the summer, I can go back to working 5 days a week if I want. But this is my first summer totally being in control of the direction of my business. And I still remember June of 2015 was the best financial month we had had to date at that time. July beat June, August beat July, and September beat August. And so every month it was going bigger and bigger, working fewer and fewer hours. And so then that became a permanent thing, that a 3-day weekend was what I was going to live, and just kept doing different time experiments to see if I could configure it and think differently about my time, which then forced me in so many ways to say, well, where am I actually spending my time? Like, if I'm doing all these things that I could outsource for 15 bucks an hour, like, why am I doing that? I should be doing the big picture stuff to bring in business, to do the high-end consulting, to do the podcasts. And so that first summer, I didn't realize what I was doing for myself, but it really was a gift to say, let's challenge the typical norm in regards to how we think about time.
No, I think that there's, and it's one where I, at least for me, I personally struggle. I'll have times where I have, I'm able to get my schedule reasonably balanced. I'm able to keep, or find that family time and do everything. And I always am striving for that. There's other times where I get behind and it gets way out of whack. And I think it is that it always seems like it's a bit of a constant challenge, because at the end of the day, when you're running your own business, you're the one that has to, or you're the one to blame, and you're the one that you get you reap the rewards, and you reap the blame depending on how it's going. And you're always the one that's having to make sure it gets done right. Well, now as you've been doing it since about 2015, so that was about 7 years ago. Bring us up a bit to where you're at today. How are things going? Continuing to grow, bringing people on. Said, hey, I'm going to pull back, and I've reached that balance, and I don't want to grow anymore, which is what some people get to the point in. Or how are kind of things going today?
Yeah, so every year, I would kind of say, well, what would be just a total game-changing decision? What can I put some time into? We might call it a gamble. Like, what's a gamble here? And so one year it was doubling my consulting rates. The next year it was if I started a mastermind group, then going from one-on-one to one-to-many, and then it was starting a membership community. And so now where we're at, kind of over the years, we've added membership communities for every phase of practice. So from the very beginning, when someone says, I want to start a counseling practice, we have next level practice, which is for therapists from that moment they think, hey, I want to start a private practice, all the way through being a successful solo practitioner. Then our next community is group practice launch. So it helps people go from being a solo practitioner to their first hire of a clinician, not an assistant. So that's a 6-month program that walks them through that process, and they meet weekly. They watch these videos and then have Q&As. I have 4 consultants that assist me now with all of that. We have a team of 10 in South Africa that kind of help with all the back end type of things. And then we have an accountability coach and director of details that kind of makes sure nothing gets dropped. So after group practice launch, then we have group practice boss, which is a membership community specifically for people that are group practice owners. So they have 2 or 3 people, all the way up to a multi-million-dollar practices. So all group practice issues, and they have a weekly meeting, a membership community. They have e-courses. We bring in experts for them to talk to. And then after that, we have audience building academy. So when people want to leave their practice, or maybe they're really good at, say, trauma work post-divorce, and they want to start an e-course or a podcast or something that goes beyond just what their counseling practice is, it helps them build an audience. And so that's a 6-month program called Audience Building Academy that walks them through that process. And we're getting people that are outside of the counseling space, but mostly people that are in some sort of service-based industry that say, I want to build something outside of my typical hourly type of thing. And so then that's now a new membership community for people that are starting to leave the private practice world. But at each level, we make it so that below them, they still get access to everything below them. So when they level up, they never lose anything. And so that's like our core, I guess, stream of income, you might say, and stream of help. And then spinning off of that, we have some one-on-one consulting and mastermind groups, and we have different conferences we host. But our core offerings are these membership communities to people. And really what's nice, about any membership community is you have predictable automated income. I mean, we have 300 people that are in next level practice paying $100 a month. Sure, if we lose 10% of those people, that's a hit financially, but we still know that for a certain number of hours that we put in as a team, that's going to be a certain amount of income, and that's scalable beyond just if I was doing all that one-on-one work. And so being able to just continue to push into things and say, what's that next level? And then, obviously last year my book, Thursday is the New Friday, came out, which is all about the history and kind of future of the 4-day work week, and why that's better for society, why it's better for the brain, and how you can actually implement it in small and medium-sized businesses.
No, and I love that. And it's I think I like the idea, and we've dipped our toe in, but haven't got in full bore on kind of having the membership community. It's always an interesting one to try and do it on the legal realm, and I think that everybody says that about every industry, but it's one where I do like the idea of having that. One, has a value to it as a product, but 2, it gives you more of a bit of a consistency, and 3 is once you get it created, you put in all the time, which is a huge amount of effort on the front end, but then it can have that consistent reward on the back end. And so it definitely sounds like a great place for you guys to be, and continuing to improve and evolve. So
I would actually argue with the membership community, at least the way we did it. We had people sign up and pay before we ever created anything. And so we said, here's what we've heard you say you want. It's going to be $55 a month. You'll be locked in at that price forever, as long as you want to have it, even if we raise our prices. But part of that is we're going to create it with you. And so the first couple of months, we're not going to have hundreds of e-courses. We're going to ask you, what do you want? And so, the first 2 months, it was like, we want to know how to blog so that it ranks higher in Google. Okay. So then I would make a course each month, and we'd release a course each month. And then that just becomes part of the archive. And so really, I would say too often, people that are really smart, that have a huge academic background like yourself or myself, we build these huge things, then we try to squeeze people into it, versus saying, hey, pay me first, and then I'll create the exact thing that you want. And then that audience says, oh, we want more of this. We want more on blogging, or we want more on intellectual property. And then you build the exact thing they want. That's how we started Next Level Practice. I didn't record anything before we had at least, 50 people that were paying $55 a month.
All right. Well, you've convinced me. I'm going to go start it today. No, I love that. Actually, an idea as a model, because one, it helps you to create the content that your people are wanting, and two, if you can get people to pay you before you actually get started, one, it proves out the concept, and two, it gives you the desire and ability to actually go out and build that, because now rather than saying, oh, I'm going to build it, kind of, if I build it, they will come, that they're going to come because they are coming. And now you get to go out and build that, but build it with the community and or craft that. So I think that's a great idea. And I'll have to take that in thought as we further explore that or that option down the road. Well, now as we wrap towards, the present day of your journey, and it's definitely fun to hear where you guys are at. With that, now, always have 2 questions at the end of each episode. So I want to jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? And what'd you learn from it?
Yeah, I think the worst business decision, luckily I didn't lose too much money, but I lost about a year of time, which is pretty much the same as money. But I launched this thing. It was called the Consultant School, and it was teaching people how to become a consultant. A lot of the things that I was doing in consulting. I spent about 80 episodes on a podcast interviewing really top people like Pat Flynn or John Lee Dumas and these huge business leaders. And at the end of it all, I sold, I think, 5 spots into this $1,000 program. So I made like $5,000 off of a whole year. I mean, I spent probably more than that on just building out the website. But what I really learned from that was that, if you have a vision for something and just go for it, and your audience isn't ready for it, and you don't even talk to your audience, you're probably going to be less successful. I think that's what's informed even what we were just talking about with our membership community, the idea of connecting with your audience before you do something. Because most of my clients at that time were just starting counseling practices. They weren't ready to consult. That wasn't even on their radar. They just wanted to grow a counseling practice. And so that to me was definitely the biggest waste of time and money. And luckily it wasn't, millions of dollars.
No, and I think that, it's a great lesson to learn from, and it's definitely interesting to hear. And some of those times where you've put in a ton of effort and you get a very small amount of money or compensation back, or you lose money in the long run, it's one that you get to learn from. So I think that's definitely a great takeaway. Second question I always ask is, now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you give them?
Right away, I would build an email course. Too often you hear, do an email newsletter, get people's emails, and people don't even conceptualize that. To me, building out an email course is the best way to have something of value right from the beginning and to stay in constant communication with your ideal client. So the basics of an email course would be, you have probably, first you'd have some sort of opt-in checklist. It could be a journal, something that's going to speed up people's progress. Have 3 emails about kind of why people are set up for failure. So why is the average attorney set up for failure? Why is the average kind of business with their intellectual property set up for failure? What's society done to make you screwed over? So it might be, we aren't even taught about intellectual property, so you don't even know like the problem. So you have 3 emails that really educate on why you were set up for failure. Then having 3 emails that are quick wins. So, if say it was an intellectual property email course, to say, here's one quick Google search that you can do to understand other intellectual property in your industry. Okay, that takes me 5 minutes, quick win. I feel like I'm a little more educated than I was before I got that email from you. So having 3 quick wins, and then having 3 emails on long-term habits. So, around intellectual property, here's like the long-term habits, you need to have. And you're lightly positioning yourself as that expert that they want to talk to. It's not just, make sure you talk to Devin every 3 months. It's here's the types of questions you should ask a good, intellectual property attorney. And so being able to then have these long-term habits. And so whether you're, teaching, stay-at-home moms how to have better fitness, or therapists on doing better marketing. There's some sort of long-term habit to be successful. And so that then, once you create that right at the beginning, for one, it helps you understand what the transformation is that you're offering people. Okay, you were taught this by society. Here's the long-term habits. You can be a different person. You can, in whatever field you're in. It also then gives you some very clear talking points, because to be able to write an email course of that substance, you have to really dig into some of the data, some of the research, some of the case studies. So you right away then become better at being interviewed. And then lastly, it gives you a place to point people towards. And so you can be, whether it's on a podcast or a local newspaper, wherever you're talking to people, say, hey, I have this free email course. It's 10 weeks. It's going to take you from this pain to this transformation. And then right from the get-go, you just get a ton of people that are opting into that and, see you as that authority in that space.
No, I love that. I think that was a lot of great takeaways and great piece of advice there. So definitely great things for people to get started on. So well, now as we wrap up this episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, our main hub is practiceofthepractice.com. Also, my book is Thursday is the New Friday. And so we dive into the whole history of time, of how we got to the 40-hour work week and why it's better to have a 4-day work week. So I'd say pick that book up wherever you get your books, or reach out to me on practiceofthepractice.com.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to check it out on the website, sign up. A lot of great content, a lot of great information, whether or not you're in the practice or you have a practice of your own, or if you're just looking for some great ideas on to how to grow your business otherwise. And so with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be guests on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, and leave us a review. So we want to make sure that everyone finds out about all these awesome journeys. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Joe, for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. And what's the next leg of your journey? Even better than the last.
Thanks.